the current situation now with regard to Iran's legal, entirely legal, right to retaliate against the attack upon it by the apartheid state in Tel Aviv?
Thank you, George. I think it's inevitable. There really is nothing else that the Iranians can do. If the Iranians don't retaliate, the Israeli regime will only become more aggressive. It is a regime that only understands force, just like we saw in 2006.
Randy, back now, Professor. You were just saying that it was inevitable because if it didn't happen, Israel's aggression would continue unbounded, with no fear of retaliation. Please develop that point, if you will.
Absolutely. When in April the Israeli regime bombed the Iranian consulate in Syria, the Iranians took the case to the UN Security Council. And the Americans, the British, the French, the Germans, they all supported the Israelis. They refused to have it condemned. So effectively, they endorsed the attack on Iran's embassy. Under such circumstances, what option does Iran have except to create its own deterrent? So the Iranians struck the regime. And we already know the story. The Iranians forced the Israelis and the Americans to spend roughly $4 billion to down a lot of cheap drones. Iran gained a lot of intelligence. When the Americans, whether it's at the Security Council and the Europeans at the Security Council, refuse to condemn the regime and effectively endorse it, when they issue statements instead of condemning the Israelis for assassinations and murder, whether in Tehran or in Beirut, and instead they support the regime, what option do they leave for countries like Iran? So Iran has no option but to strike the regime, and it will do so. And the same is true with Hezbollah. They have no option because this is a brutal regime that's allowed to do anything it wants. And we see what they're doing in Gaza. We see how the Americans are giving $20 more billion of weapons so that they can continue the slaughter. So anyone who says that the Iranians should stand down or that the Iranians should seek a diplomatic solution is simply being naive. And what they will ultimately do is they're going to encourage, if Iran was to do such a thing, and it won't, is that it will encourage the regime to carry out a more audacious attack against Iran in future. And ultimately, Iran will have to respond then.